IAS Academy.
Hello all, welcome to IAS Academy and welcome back to the program Editorial Daily, where we deal with editorial analysis which enriches your perspective and enhances your answer writing. So let's get started with our today's session. The first article for today is Need for Inclusive Integrated Climate Action. Okay, so today we will discuss this topic which is related to the article which is related to the climate action which we have to take up. Okay, so the author of the article is Aruna Bhattacharya. She is a medical anthropologist and a public health expert of specializing in urban health system. Okay, so yes, what is this climate change? What is the article is highlighting about is the article is basically highlighting about the climate change is not only the environment issue. Climate change is not only the environmental issue but also a public health issue. Okay, public health and governance challenge, especially in the rapid urbanizing cities. Rapid urbanizing cities. Okay, so basically whenever we talk about this climate change, we often think of this rising temperatures, floods, might be the pollution and all. So however, this article reminds us that the impact of this climate change is not experienced equally. Okay, so the worst affected are often those who keep our cities functioning, like the sanitation workers, the waste collectors, and the street sweepers, and the drain cleaners. Okay, so a truly resilient city is not just one with the modern infrastructure, but the one that protects the health, safety, and dignity of its people, especially the vulnerable workers. Okay, this is what the article is completely talking about. About the basically, it is talking about this sanitary cleaners. Okay, so we will see what is this article and how it is linked to the topics of our GS paper. Okay, yes, let's see. So, yes, when we see into the topic, which is the need of inclusive integrated climate action in the urban governance, which is the source is Live Mint editorial, which is of 16th May 2025. Okay, so the syllabus which we can link this article to our GS paper 2 in the concern of governance, welfare schemes for vulnerable sessions, government policies, and the interventions. And for GS paper 3 also we can link this article by for the environmental pollution and degradation, climate change, disaster management, urban health islands, and urbanization problems and the remedies also. And yes, coming to the context of the context of the topic goes like, with the appointment of a new minister for urban development in Karnataka, there is a critical opportunity to shift the public conservation around the urban development from purely infrastructure heavy models to an inclusive framework that integrates the public health, climate, resilience, and the labor welfare for essential informal workers. Okay, and how can you come up with the introduction for this topic is, see, the conventional urban planning in India predominantly elevates a city's development through the lens of concentrate in concrete infrastructure, which is the smart city technologies and the economic output. Okay, so, however, the true metric of the resilient cities lies in how it is foundational system supports the health and the well-being of a frontline workers who keep it functioning. Okay, in an era of accelerating this climate change, environmental degradation is not an equalizer. It impacts are severely mediated by the socio-economic vulnerabilities, turning this climate change into a core challenge of a urban governance. This is how you can come up with the introduction to this article. Okay, moving forward, let us see what is this double burden which is mentioned in the article, the double burden of vulnerability on essential workers. The first one is the occupational hazardness, like the sea, the sanitation and the frontline workers endure the long outdoor hours, transforming the extreme heat waves from occasional spikes into the routine workplace hazards. Okay, so this leads to the severe the physiological strains, including the chronic dehydration, the heat exhaustion, the kidney related the kidney related problems, and the cardiovascular stress. Okay, yes, obviously when we see into this the frontline workers, and rather they might be the sanitary workers and all, they are facing many issues regarding these concerns because they have to work on roads like even though it is rain, though it is heat, they have to face all the extremities of the weather. Okay, so they are facing many problems with that. Next, the second one is the residential vulnerabilities. Basically, these sanitary workers and all, a significant portion of these workers resides in a informal settlements. They won't settle in a formal settlements like this urbanization people are living. They live in of informal settlements or slums, which are categorized by the overcrowded housing, which is lack of adequate ventilation, scarce of water supply, and the minimal green cover. Okay, so during the extreme weather events, the inadequate drainage increases the flooding risks. So that while poor access to clean the drinking water, which hides the disease outbreaks for them. Okay, yes, this is what the double burden of the vulnerability on the essential workers we can talk about. The next comes the systemic deficiencies in the current urban state systems. How it comes up is, the first one is the infrastructure delivery gap. The infrastructure delivery gap, which says that a traditional urban health metrics which focuses heavily on the paper-based welfare schemes, the macroscopic diseases mortality data, or the physical count of the healthcare facilities. Okay, so they fail to access whether these systems actually serve the marginalized group in practice. Okay, and yes, the second thing is the institutional and structural barriers. When we see the institutional and structural barriers, we can talk like access to the social protection mechanism is severely limited by the administrative hurdles, complex documentation requirements, a lack of grassroots awareness, and the fragmented responsibilities across the multiple government departments. Okay, yes, and the third one is the unprepared primary healthcare. And the third concern is the unprepared primary healthcare, where the urban primary healthcare, the UPHCs basically frequently lack the specialized training staff, training, the data tracking, and the resources required to identify or manage and log the climate sensitive or the heat related illness among the outdoor workers. Okay, now when coming to the framework for this climate centric urban policy is, first, you can talk up about the occupational heat action plans. Okay, how it is integrated is, see, integrating explicit heat and climate adaptation protocols into the occupational health policies for both the municipal and the third party contract sanitation workers. And what are the key measures we can take up is the mandated shed rest zones, which has to be installed, and accessible clean drinking water for them, and the altered shift timings during the peak heat or UVRs. Peak heat or UVRs, this shift timings have to be shifted. And next, the scheduled health checkups. Scheduled health checkups have to come up. These are the few key measures which we can take up in their working times. Okay. The next is targeted upgradation of the informal settlements. Like, see, prioritizing the public investment to improve the basic housing structures. The basic housing structures like the local water security, the robust drainage networks, and the localized green infrastructure within the informal settlements to migrate the urban heat island effect. Okay, so what are the key focus areas to improve this is improved housing structures, improving the housing structures. And the second one is the local water security, which has to be developed, and then the robust drainage networks have to be developed, and the localized green infrastructure also have to be developed. Okay, yes. Next is coming to the data driven governance. How can we come up with is, see, creating the comprehensive urban data tracking occupational heat exposure, the healthcare seeking trends, and the long term socioeconomic costs of these climate impacts on the informal workforce. Okay, so what is the data to track of it is, we have to first see the occupational heat exposure, how much they are exposing during their timings, how much they are exposing to the heat. We have to take care of it. Next is the healthcare seeking trends. What are the healthcare seeking trends? The data have to be taken in a record. Then is the socio-economic cost of the climate impacts, and the long-term vulnerability mapping has to be done. Okay, yes. The next thing is breaking the policy seals. Policy silos means, see, the climate resilience, combiningly the climate resilience, the labor welfare, and public health and urban employment development. Okay, covering this climate resilience, resiliences, municipal labor welfare, and the public health into a singular unified urban development policy domain rather than the treating them as isolated fields. Rather than treating all this as an isolated fields, when we combine this completely into an urban development, then it works out. Okay, so what is the unified approach we can take up is, see, the climate resilience plus the labor welfare plus the public health, which gives you a inclusive and resilient urban future. Okay, yes. When coming up to the conclusion of the topic, the conclusion of this article we can give as, a state like Karnataka chart their future urban trajectories, they must recognize the cities are the living ecosystems. Cities as the living ecosystems, which is defined by the systems that enable their people to survive and thrive, not merely by their physical infrastructure. So, the transitioning to an integrated, inclusive model of climate action which ensures that urban growth protects its most valuable assets, the human labor that sustains it. Okay, so there are few key terminologies which we can use it for our answer writing, for our UPSC mains answer writing. The first one is the double burden of climate risk. What is this double burden of climate risk? Is the corresponding vulnerability which is faced by the compounding vulnerability which is faced by the informal workers who are exposed to the extreme climate elements as their workplace and forced to live in a climate vulnerable, poorly insulted housing. Okay, and next is the infrastructure driven bias. What is this infrastructure driven bias? Is it is an urban planning flaw where the success is quantified solely by the physical and the technological assets. What are those technological assets and the physical assets? Is the roads, buildings, and the smart grids. Okay, while ignoring the human centric indicators like the well-being and the equity and the access. Okay, next, coming to the barometer of the urban performance, we can see is using the live conditions like the health outcomes and the systemic accesses of the most marginalized group, like example we can say the sanitation workers, as the ultimate test of the urban system's efficiency and the equality. Okay, next, the next key terminology which we can see up is the climate centric urban policy. Okay, what is this climate centric urban policy? Is it is a planning framework that actively integrates the climate adoption, environmental variabilities, and the heat mitigation strategies which are directly into local labor, housing, and the healthcare systems. Okay, next, the last one is the policy silos. Policy silos. What is this policy silos? Is it is an administrative failure where the interconnected sectors like the health, the labor welfare, and the environmental aspects which operate commonly independent of each other, so resulting in the fragmented and ineffective governance. Okay, these are the few key terminologies which you can take up from this article. Okay, yes, let's move on to the next article for today. Yes. The next article for today, which we are going to discuss, is remaining the sovereign AI for India's strategic future. Okay, so this article examines how this artificial intelligence has become a strategic asset, like much like oil, the semiconductors, or the defense technologies. So it argues that India should aim not to complete the self reliance, but for the strategic autonomy, which is leveraging the global AI while gradually reducing the critical technological dependency. Okay, when we see what is this artificial intelligence, what are we talking about? Is this artificial intelligence is no longer just a technological innovation. When we see this AI is no longer a technological innovation, it is becoming a tool for what you call the economic growth. Rather it be the economic growth, rather it be the national national security, and the geopolitical influence and the geopolitical influence. Okay, so yes, when we see the recent developments which illustrates the trend is the United States has restricted, the US has restricted the access to advanced AI models on national security grounds. Okay, and coming to Europe, Europe is promoting the indigenous AI through the public procurement and investments. And the other countries are competing to attract this AI investments. So these developments indicate that AI policy is increasingly shaped by the national interest rather than the free market principles. Okay, so when you see this article basically explains that countries are using AI to strengthen their economic and the strategic positions. So for India, the this presents both the opportunities as well as the challenges. Opportunities through its strong IT services sector, and challenges because India still depends heavily on the foreign AI models rather than the indigenous AI models. Okay, so good cloud infrastructure and the advanced chips also, we will be we are still depending on the foreign models. Okay, the key challenge for India is now is to enjoy the benefits of global AI innovation without becoming the strategically dependent. Okay, so what is this India dilemma of it is India has the world class software engineers and the IT companies with us. But however, India lacks the frontier AI models, and it lacks the advanced semiconductors manufacturing units in India, and the large scale computing infrastructure, and the significant AI research funding. Okay, so this article mainly argues that India cannot outspend the global AI giants, global AI giants like the OpenAI or Google, whose annual AI investments are exceeding India's total private research and development expenditure. Okay, so therefore, India needs a smarter strategy instead of a speeding race. Okay, let's see what is this article completely and how we can link this to our subject papers and rest. Okay, let's see. Yes, when you see the topic of this content is remaining sovereign AI for India's strategic future. Okay, now how can we link this article to the syllabus is in GS paper 2 we can link this article to the government policies and interventions, the international relationships, the geopolitical of emerging technologies. Okay, and for GS paper 3 we can link this article to the science and technology paper, which is the development and their applications and effects in everyday life, indigenization of the technology, awareness in the field of IT and computers. Okay, now let us see the context of the topic. How would this go? And the context goes like the global landscape of artificial intelligence, the AI, is witnessing the aggressive geopolitical maneuvering with nations like the US and the European countries, which are adopting the protectionist and the strategic policies to secure the AI dominance. So, India in this shifting paradigm, India as a large IT service economy is lacking its own frontier AI and must articulate a coherent sovereign strategy to balance the global technological integration with the domestic self reliance. Okay, yes, when we see the introduction to the topic, how we can go up to this is the aggressive AI policy is becoming the new normal in the global geopolitics. So, the recent action by the United States, such as the restricting the foreign access to the advanced models like the Anthropic's Fab 5 and Mythos 5 on national security ground, it is restricting the access of these two AI tools, and prioritizing the federal access demonstrate that governments are increasingly shaping AI policy around national advantage. Okay, so similarly, the Europe is also investing heavily in the local AI compute by European, while countries like Argentina offer the regulatory safe harbors. Okay, next is for India, this undercovers a critical need to review the global development and craft a strategy that leverages frontier technology without letting its economic sovereignty depend on the foreign policy decisions. Okay, yes. This is how the introduction goes for this topic. The next is the strategy dilemma, which is the diffusion versus the dependency, which we see is first is the necessity of foreign models. The necessity of the foreign models. See, currently using the best available foreign AI models is the only way of Indian IT and app companies to raise the domestic productivity, to build the economic surplus, and the outcompete the rivals. Okay, the only thing for our India is to using the best available foreign AI for our in the Indian IT and the app companies. Okay, the next is the geopolitical risk. How would we face this geopolitical risk? Is while this rapid diffusion of this AI boosts the short-term competitiveness, the relying entity on this foreign entities for core technological architecture creates these severe strategic vulnerabilities. Okay, so private firms can basically manage this commercial risks through derived supply chains, but they cannot insult themselves against the geopolitical risks or concentrated technological dependence. Okay, the next is the R&D gap, the research and the development gap. See, the 0.6 percentage of the GDP of the India's R&D is being spent on the $50 million compute in the open AI. Okay, so India is currently spending 0.6 percentage of its GDP on the research and development on research and development, with the private sector accounting for just a third party apps. Okay, so third of this, just a third of this. Okay, so in contrast, this open AI alone projects a compute spending of rupees 50 billion in this year, over 6 times India's entire annual private R&D spend. Okay, so consequently India cannot simply outspend this global leaders in the frontier AI investment. Okay, this is what we can see about the strategic dilemma. Next is the role of the state, like the sovereign AI strategy. What is this and how it comes up is, so yes, see the first one, the breaking the false binary. Breaking the false binary in the sense, India must abandon the false dictatory between the globalization and the industrial policy. So it must benefit from both simultaneously. It has to benefit simultaneously from the both. Okay. Next is the building linkages. Building linkages in the sense, the India need to deepen its background linkage. It has to deepen the background linkages to frontier AI through the strategic government action. At the same time, it must strengthen the forward linkages to the global markets for its products. Okay. Yes. When you see, the third thing is the whole of government approach. The AI strategy cannot be cannot be solely come up. It has to be the ministries such as the external affairs must coordinate closely with the commerce, IT, defense, energy, as well as the telecom to better serve and protect the technology industry. Okay, so the next thing is the underwriting geopolitical risks. Like, just as the state uses this export credit to ensure the firms against the disruption or the hybrid annuity, contracts to shoulder the risk for long generation infrastructure projects. So the government must set into underwrite the geopolitical risks of technological dependence, which that private firms cannot efficiently bear alone. Okay, this is what the sovereign AI strategy can be come up in the states. Okay, yes. The next is the imperative for the private sector. The imperative for private sector is, in that we can come up with the overcoming compliancy. The overcoming complaints, like the Indian tech ecosystem cannot rest on the past laurels. Okay, so competitors like the Philippines already generates a $40 billion in IT exports, nearly a sixth of India's, and are growing faster than the global industry. Okay, this Philippine country. The next is innovation and ambition. Currently, no Indian app features among the globally top 10 downloads. No India app, not even a single app, has been topped in the top 10 list, which the apps in which they have been downloading in app purchase revenue or the monthly active users. Okay, so the industry must pivot its focus towards the quality, the global ambition, and creating the innovative products which are valuable to the world. Okay, next. The next is coherent strategic voice. Like, see, instead of the incumbent IT firms which is obsessing over the visas and the market accesses, and startups being consumed by the regulatory frictions, both must unite to push for a strategy. Okay, so the global keep India deeply integrated with the leading global AI ecosystem while steadily building the domestic capability. Okay, this is what we can talk about this article. And coming to the conclusion of this article, which we can take up, is the real global consent. The real global contest in AI is not merely about who builds the most advanced foundational models, but rather who captures the immense economic and strategic advantage they generate. This is what it is being the what we can tell. Okay, so okay. India's policy objective must be clear and pragmatic. Like, it must leverage the global AI to accelerate its digital economy while systematically working to reduce the strategic vulnerabilities that such integration inherently creates. Okay. Yes. When coming to the key terminologies of the from this topic, which we can take up for our mains answer writing, is the first one is frontier AI systems. Frontier AI systems, which is highly advanced large scale artificial intelligence models that possess the capabilities matching or exceeding the most advanced systems which are currently available. Okay, so typically, which is requiring the massive computational power, like we can say example of upwards of 10 step trillion floating point operations to train. Okay, yes. Next is the sovereign AI. What is the sovereign AI? Is a nation strategic framework. It is a nation's strategic framework and capability to develop, govern, and utilize the AI technologies in a manner that protects its national security, economic independence, and the geopolitical interests. Okay. The next is the whole of government approach. What is it? It is a public administration strategy where the multiple government ministries and the agencies, like example the IT, the defense, the external affairs, and all, they collaborate seamlessly to achieve a shared strategic objective. Okay, yes. And the next one is hybrid annuity contracts. What is this hybrid annuity contracts? Is it is a financial model where often used in the infrastructures and all, where the government and private sector shares the financial risk. Not only the government and the private sector shares the financial risks. The state funds a portion of the project and makes the fixed payments over the time, so preventing the private capital from bearing the total risk. Okay, yes. Come next is the geopolitical risk underwriting. What is this? This is the process by which a government assumes the financial or the strategic risks which are associated with the international policy instability or the foreign policy shifts, which is protecting the domestic industries from the global shocks. Okay, these are the few key terminologies which we can take up for our, just a second. Yes, these are few key terminologies we can take up for our UPSC mains answer rating if we get anything related to AI. Okay, yes. And yes, these are the articles for today. So both the articles which highlights the India's future resilience, which is depends on the adopting an integrated and the forward-looking development strategy. Okay, so whether addressing the challenges of the climate change or the harnessing of the opportunities of the artificial intelligence, the common thread is needed for inclusive governance, the strategic planning, and the long-term investment in the human and the institutional capacity. Okay, so the climate resilient cities requires the policies that place people, especially the vulnerable workers, at the center of the urban planning, while this AI driven growth demands the strategic autonomy through the innovation, research, and the global collaboration. So in both the cases, the industries and the society must work together rather than the working in different sectors. Okay, so ultimately, India's progress will not be measured in solely in the technological advancement or the physical infrastructure which we talk, but its ability to build the resilient, inclusive, and the future-ready nation that protects its people while strengthening in the global competitiveness. So, this balanced approach will help the India achieve the vision of sustainable development, technology leadership, and the goal of Vikshit Bharat of 2047. Okay, this is how we can conclude our articles. And yes, these are the articles for today. If I hope you'll like this video. If you want a detailed note of it, do visit our website and download it from there. And do follow, like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel for editorial analysis on daily basis. And do follow our Instagram and Telegram ID for your UPSC preparation. And you can find this editorial analysis PDFs also in the Instagram and as well as in the Telegram as well. Okay, so all the links are provided in the description below. Do follow, share, and subscribe our channels. Okay, thank you, and see you all soon tomorrow in the another editorial analysis. Thank you.